Hello. Désolé, je ne parle pas français. My name is Marit van Dijk, and I'm here to talk to you about how to be more productive with IntelliJ IDEA. Normally I have a 45-minute session, so I'm going to try to squish it into 30 minutes. Sorry if I go fast. This is a list of all the things I'd like to show you, so let's see how far we get. I'm going to quickly fold this away as a custom editor fold and call it Agenda, and then fold it away. As you can see, the shortcuts that I'm using are shown in the bottom. That's a feature called Presentation Assistant. So I will show you the standard macOS shortcuts and Windows and Linux shortcuts for those of you who are interested. The point of this is not to teach you all of the shortcuts, but to show you some features that you can use when you're writing code and using IntelliJ IDEA. So the names of the features are also shown. But if there's one shortcut that I would like you to learn, it's Shift-Shift, search everywhere. You can find pretty much anything from there. And there are separate tabs. So if you want to filter the list down, you can go down the tabs. For example, if you're looking for a particular action, like save as live template, which we will do later, you can go to the relevant tab. You can also change settings from there. For example, currently I have tab placement at the top, so the tabs will be shown. If I want to turn that off, I can do that from here. So you can toggle settings or navigate to settings if you want. So you can find pretty much anything from there. So that's Shift-Shift. Now, if we don't have tabs, how do we navigate? We can use recent files to go to recent files, and if we use that same shortcut again, it will show us only the files that we edited. And we can also open lots of windows from here. So, for example, lots of windows have shortcuts, but if I want to open the AI assistant, my go-to prompt to see if I have a connection is, can you tell me a joke? Then I can open that from there as well. But let's get to writing some code. Of course, the first thing that we need to do is to write a main method. Very helpfully, AI Assistance Cloud Completion will do that for me. I'm actually going to put it in airplane mode so it doesn't give spoilers for my demo. There are other ways that we can write the main method. Obviously, we have code completion if we write public, static, etc. But there are also live templates. Does anybody know the live template to write a main method? I heard PSVM? PSVM will do for public static void main. Alternatively, we can also simply write main, and that will expand to the main method. So we're going to write some fairly simple code. We're going to write some code that reads lines from a file and prints them to the console. But along the way, we'll see some useful features. So I want to use a buffered reader to read the lines from the file. I could type buffered reader until it shows up. And here we have the full-line code completion that runs locally. I'm going to quickly ignore that. I can also use camel casing. So if I type BR, that will also find buffered reader. So that might be a faster way to find the things that you want. IntelliJ will suggest a name based on the type that we have. And we're going to new buffered reader, taking a file reader, taking a file. We can accept partial suggestions, but then we have to import it ourselves. And the file is called lines.txt. Now I'm using another favorite shortcut, which is complete current statement, because I need the semicolon at the end. I remember when it was 1999 and I had to hunt down missing semicolons by myself. Anyone else? Just me? Okay. But now we also see that IntelliJ is trying to keep our code in a compiling state, but we have the red squigglies, a little bit of interpretive dance there, telling us that there's something wrong. Does anybody know the shortcut to fix it? No? No audience participation? Am I in Switzerland? Y'all are very quiet. Okay, no more questions, sorry. So to go to the next error, we can navigate with F2. If you have multiple errors and warnings in a file, you don't have to hunt them down with your mouse. And then we can use Alt-Enter to get suggestions and add that to the method signature, for example. We can use F2 to navigate to the next highlighted error. And by default, it will go to errors first and then warnings. But if you want to change that, you can do that here in the inspection widget and set it to all problems instead of highest priority. I'm going to leave it as is. So we'll want to assign those lines that we read to an array list or to a collection. I'm going to go with an array list, a list of strings, and I want to assign that array list to a variable. And I don't want to move my cursor all the way back to the front of the line, so I can use extract variable to extract that variable. That will open up a template, and if I want to change anything in the template, I can use Shift-Tab to go to the first part of the template, in case, for example, I would want to declare an array list, which I don't. And also, there are lots of little hints in IntelliJ IDEA of additional things that you can do. I don't know if you can see this, but helpfully it gives me the shortcut that I can never remember. So Shift-Option-O will open the additional options that I have when declaring this variable. So I could declare it final or a var type. And I still don't need to use my mouse because I can press the Option key and then using the mouse as a pointer. The F and the V are actually underlined. So if I press F, that will select that box or unselect that box because that's not actually what I want. Then we need a string line. Thank you, code completion. And we'll go over all of the lines. So while line equals, and I want to read from the buffered reader. And if you know the interface of buffered reader, you can type r.r for reader.readLine. So we don't have to type the whole thing. If you don't know the interface, that's fine. You can type reader and then either go hunting for the method, and in this case, IntelliJ already suggested read line. And we want to only read the lines that are not null. Now, did you notice that this turned into a nice-looking character? That's because I'm using a font that has ligatures. So I'm using JetBrains Mono, and I've enabled ligatures, which means that if there are ASCII characters that combine to a character, they are shown as ligatures. I can disable that if I want to see the regular ASCII, but I find the ligatures prettier, and who says backenders can't have nice things? So using complete statement, again, to get, in this case, the curly brackets. I do see I have some red code here again, so let's go there and fix that. And I want to add them all to the array list of strings, so I can do s.a instead of typing the whole thing. And I want to add line. And then if I type a semicolon or colon here, IntelliJ is smart enough to know that that goes at the end of the line, and we'll put it there. I actually want to only read the lines that are not blank. So I want to add an if statement, but I don't want to move my cursor around. I want to surround this with an if statement and say that if line is blank, I want to say is not blank. So if I type an exclamation mark here, it will be negated. So again, I don't have to move my cursor around. And then, of course, in the end, I want to close the reader. And I might want to do something with those strings that I've read into the array list. There are lots of live templates that we can use. For example, to array of string. And if I want to assign this to a variable, we've already seen we can use a refactoring to extract a variable. But we can also use postfix completion, which is also a type of live template that you can apply to something. In this case, .var will also create the variable. And if we were doing this the other way around, so we already declared our string array of or our array of strings, and we want to assign something to it, we have smart type completion, which will only complete something that is the right type. In this case, we have an array of strings, which is args from the main method. And if we use the same shortcut twice, we get additional options, and 3 times even more options. This is not actually what I want, so I'll remove that. What I want to do is I want to iterate over the list of strings. There must be a live template for that. So I can pull up the list of live templates, and I can actually search them for the thing that I want. So I want to iterate. I get the enhanced for loop. And yes, I do want to print them to system out, spoiler. But of course, there's a live template for that. And we can also do that the other way around. So we can also say string dot south. So there's also a postfix completion for that. So now we have a running program. Let's see if it works. And that reads all of the lines from the file and prints them to system out. We can also create our own live templates. So if we select this bit and then search for save as live template, I have to delete the one that I just did earlier while preparing for my demo. We can add variables here that will become placeholders for when we use this template. We can say where the cursor should end up when we are done with the template. And let's say we want to perform a command inside the loop. And then we can edit these variables and say, for example, for the command, I want to have completion. No, regular completion. OK. And we need to give it a name, demo. Bonjour. There you go. Very little French, like I said. So now if we type the demo, it will give us this same template. And it will give us completion here. So you can use this for all kinds of nifty things. It's especially useful if you're doing live demos. Just to show you that you can do that if you have snippets of code that you need a lot. OK, so we have working code, as we've just seen. But it's 2025. Are we happy with this code? No? No, I see people shaking their head. Thank you for your participation, sir. Tough crowd. Anyway, so let's see if IntelliJ has some suggestions. So here we can collapse the loop with a stream. You know, we're past Java 8 by some numbers. Let's see about this while loop. That can also be a stream. And then we can change that. We can put those on the same line. Let's say the buffered reader. We can do a try with resources. And then we no longer need this. Better? Yes, OK. Well, OK, it's not that exciting. Come on. Thank you. Still runs, still works. Yay. So let's see what else we can do. We can select this and extract a method, say read lines. And then we can make it a little bit better. I don't like the empty lines. So now instead of returning the strings after the try, we can return it inside the try, meaning we no longer need this. Or, yes, the imports, unused imports. There's a shortcut to remove the imports as well. But also for some of you who never remove the unused imports, there's a setting, optimize imports on the fly. I have some teammates who need this setting, or I used to. Anyway, does it still work? Yes, perfect. So let's look at some more refactoring. We can, of course, rename variables. We can use a single letter variable inside a predicate, that's fine. Let's add some additional filters and change them, because otherwise we're filtering the same thing. So let's say we want if s doesn't start with, and then if I would press enter now, it would insert starts with, but it would keep the is blank. And I don't want that. I want it to actually overwrite that. So if I do tab, then it will overwrite what's already there, which is very useful. And then the same here. I want to say length tab is bigger than 3. So now it's going to filter out some of the lines. And if we want to see that in action, we can run it through the debugger. So let's add a breakpoint here. And you see that it puts the breakpoint where my cursor was on this lambda. So now we have a lambda breakpoint that will break on this lambda. So if we run it through the debugger now, we can observe the value of our variable s. We can, of course, continue to run through the program, either here or with the shortcut. But it's just going to give us the value of the string every time, which isn't very useful if I want to see what's actually going on with these filters. But we have a feature called trace current stream chain. So there we can actually see the collection and see what happens. So we see the result of the reader of the lines that are read. We have the first filter. If we hover over it, we can see what it does. So we see that it filters out the blank lines. The next one filters out the one that starts with an A. And the next one filters out anything that is shorter than 3 characters. And then to list. We can also see this in flat mode, but right now I don't see any of the values anymore. This is useful if you have one of those fancy wide monitors, maybe, but I don't. So this is a much better way to look at what's going on if you're filtering some data. There's much more that you can do with debuggers. I want to invite you to look at my latest debugging video on the IntelliJ IDEA channel. Like and subscribe, thanks. That will have more tips. Because I have only the 30 minutes, I can't show you all of my favorite debugging features. But trace current stream chain is very cool. Let's remove that breakpoint. Of course, we have now all of these filters on the same line, which makes it a little bit harder to read. So we can actually select all occurrences and then put them on lines one below each other. If you want to do that for all of your code, if you prefer to have each one on a separate line, you can adjust the code style settings to wrapping embraces, chained method calls, wrap always, and then each one will start on a separate line. So that might be more useful. Then we can add additional things here. For example, create a new user of S, which IntelliJ will suggest to replace with the method reference. And then, yes, user to string works for me. There are lots of features that can help you when reading code. I have a whole talk on reading code. If you want all of those features, you can find that online. For example, we can ask for the documentation, which isn't very useful since this doesn't have documentation. So let's take AI Assistant off airplane mode and ask AI Assistant to write me some documentation. Perfect. That was much faster than my typing. So now when we pull up the documentation, it will give you the Java doc as well. Oh, wait, forgot to show you. You can actually convert this to Markdown as of Java 23. So there's an inspection for that, of course. So you can use Markdown comments as well. Yeah, so let's look at some other refactorings. We can also extract parameters. So, for example, the file name and the file name, like so. But I did them the wrong way around. I want the file name first and then the suffix. Sorry, file name first for you, then the suffix. So I could move these around, but then only the parameters will change and not the actual values at the call site. So what I want is I want to change the signature of this method. And I can pull up a refactoring menu, which will show me the relevant refactorings in this case, the most used refactorings that are relevant in this case. And we can use change signature and then move this one down. And then we see that they are changed here, but also at the call site. Obviously, this is not a very useful refactoring. We can undo it by inlining the parameter, if you know the shortcut for that refactoring, or it's also under Alt-Enter. And then undo what we just did, and also make this one line again. Yeah, so now we have some code that maybe looks a little bit better, a little bit more 2025. Let's look at some other features. Actually, language injection. So sometimes we're working with strings that are actually represent a particular format. For example, this is clearly JSON, so we can actually mark it as JSON in different types of JSON as well. And then we can also edit the JSON fragment in a separate window if that's what we prefer, which might make it easier. If you need to copy-paste some JSON from somewhere, then you don't need to take into account the text block and the formatting and the trimming. We can do the same with HTML. We can do the same with SQL as well, and if you have a database connection set up, then you can even edit the field names and the table names. Who likes to write regex? I saw you. There are always some of you. Anyway, for the rest of us, so this is it already injected as regex? So here's a very useful trick. You can check the regex to see whether a string matches a particular regex. Now, this is a regex that I also still understand. It wants 3 digits, a hyphen, and then 4 digits. So now I have 3 and 3. So if I add another digit, it will tell me, hey, that string matches. If I add another digit, it will tell me, hey, that string doesn't match. If I add a letter, also it doesn't match. So that can be very useful. Another very useful thing is AI actions. We have an AI action explain code, which is probably the feature I use the most. But we also have explain regex fragment, explain cron expression, explain SQL, etc. So if you use that, it will explain the regex to you. So for all of your colleagues, sir, who likes to write regex, this will be very useful. Let me see. We saw some inspections that we used with Alt-Enter. Sometimes you have the same problem in multiple places. So we can use the inspections to say, replace this with just the diamond operator. But if we want to do that for the same thing in many places, we can fix it in several places at once. Then SSR. But we can also create our own templates. Let me quickly copy-paste this to save myself some typing. So let's say we have this pattern in our code base where we check whether an optional is available and else it's null. And if it's null, we throw an exception. We could, of course, also use or else throw. But if we're using this throughout our code base, I don't want to fix that manually. So I want to create an inspection to do so. So I'm going to shift again and go for search structurally, which will fill the code that I had selected. Actually, I want to replace structurally, so I should have searched for that, actually. And I copy-pasted what I want. I want the or else throw. So I can select variables or define variables in here. Of course, I need to define them here as well. And I can also say this should be of type optional, so I can add a modifier of type optional. And now it will say that this is type optional. And actually, if you have code that isn't in your code base, IntelliJ will immediately mark it as this does not match anything in your project. So then you know you're creating something you don't need. In this case, if we press find, we obviously find the example I just used. And we can replace this or replace all, or we can create an inspection from template. And I also copy-pasted the title. So now we have the inspection, and we can use Alt-Enter to replace that with the or else throw. So if you have this throughout your code base, and this is just an example, I'm sure you have examples in your code base of, this is ugly, I need to change it. So now you can. Let's just double check. Obviously, if I select this in the same file, it's going to show me, hey, you have this same text. But let's say we're comparing across files. There's the compare with clipboard to make sure that we have the exact same thing. In one of my previous jobs, we had all of our cloud settings in our Git repo, but also another place where we could actually run them and change settings. So every time we did a deploy, it was good to make sure that what was there was also what was in the repo so that you're not overwriting stuff. And using this is actually super useful. So let's go back to main. No, that is not at all what I wanted. let's go back to main. Obviously, I don't know if anybody saw, but today we released Junie, our coding agent, is now general available. So I wanted to show you also Junie. So we have AI Assistant that offers small actions throughout the code base, some of which you just saw. But we now also have Junie, and you can actually give your tasks to Junie to perform, and Junie will find the right files, create files for you, run tests, run your project, etc. So let me find my prompt and copy-paste that. So I'm going to ask Junie to write the same thing that I just did. Before I press play, there is an ask mode, so you can ask Junie first to make a plan and write that to a file or ask it questions. Or there's a code mode where it will actually go and do stuff. There's a brave mode, but I am not brave, so I'm not going to click it. And in the brave mode, it will run commands on your terminal. It hasn't tried to do anything dangerous yet, but again, I'm not brave. So I'm not going to give it blanket permission to run stuff on the terminal, but that does mean that I have to pay attention to when it wants my attention to run something. So Junie will create a plan, so it will examine the context of the lines. Yes, run the command. Check whether there is already an existing main. See, it already added the code. Implement the solution and test that it works. So it will try to, if it wrote tests, it will run tests. If some of the tests fail, it will retry until the tests pass. Usually it will try to fix the tests. Sometimes it will also try to change the test to, so pay attention to what it's doing. We can look at the diffs if we click these here, or go back to main. It's telling us what it's doing. It's super useful. I've used it for some small stuff. Some of my colleagues are using it to build games. I'm using it for boring stuff like build me a Spring Boot application. But anyway, we can't all be as creative as my colleagues. So this is our new coding agent that can be super useful to, help do your boilerplate so you don't have to, or help build prototypes much faster. It's still running. It takes longer than I would like to verify that it's actually done. Okay, it's done. Let's see if this code runs and does the same thing as the code that I did. And it looks like it did. Good job, Junie. So please give Junie a try. And in the meantime, let's commit that. We can use AI Assistant to generate commit messages for us. We can still edit them if you need more information on why something was changed. Or if you want to have a different style of commit messages, you can change that too. For example, if I want to say use max 10 words, and then I redo it. Or as someone at the booth today suggested, max 10 words and an emoji. That works too. That would have been more fun. So AI Assistant offers you lots of small things throughout the IDE, and Junie offers you coding agent that can do stuff for you. With that, if you want more information, there are two QR codes. The one that says more information will take you to the link that is under it on my website with more information on this talk, a slightly longer version that I did at Vox Day Zurich a few weeks ago, if you want to catch the recording and more debugging tips. And also, if you like this session, please provide me with feedback on the other QR code. Thanks. Merci beaucoup.